Hello everybody, my name is Julia Peyton-Jones and I'm delighted that you've joined me for Tea with Julia today. My guest is David Ross, who is a UK entrepreneur and philanthropist, best known for co-founding the Carphone Warehouse Group plc in 1991. David's philanthropic work is carried out through the David Ross Foundation, which he founded. The foundation makes charitable donations to a range of educational, community cultural initiatives, including the David Ross Education Trust, the University of Nottingham, his Neville Holt Opera Festival, and also projects in Lincoln with the Historic Lincoln Trust and Lincoln Cathedral. In 2007, David founded the David Ross Education Trust. The first school to join the trust in 2007 was Havelock Academy, a secondary school based in David's hometown of Grimsby. Recognised as one of 11 system leaders nationwide, the Trust has 34 primary and secondary schools in the East Midlands, Yorkshire and London. David is also chair of New Schools Network. David is chair of the National Portrait Gallery and chair of the University of Nottingham's Development Committee. David is a board member of the British Olympic Association and British Paralympic Association. Educated at Uppingham School and Nottingham University, he qualified as a chartered accountant with Arthur Anderson & Co., working with the firm from 1998 to 1991. Hooray! Well, standing ovation. I mean, what a CV. It's absolutely incredible. And welcome. How are you?
Good morning, Julia. How are you? Very well, thank you.
Very, very nice to see you.
And very nice to see you.
Thank you so much for doing this. The sound isn't very good. We're getting a quote, so I might put on my earpiece to see if that will help.
Carl, do you have an earpiece that I could borrow? Earphones? Oh dear. My technical advisor hasn't got the earphones with him. He's going to go to his bedroom and find some. Jude, no. I can't hear you, Julia.
And see how we get on. And if it goes really badly, we'll go on to plan B. So in preparation for this interview, my research identified 7 sectors. No sound. Ladies
No
and
sound.
gentlemen.
There's no sound.
Nobody can hear. Could you give us a few seconds, please?
There's no sound, Carl.
I'm maximum sound.
Hold on.
There are feedback effects, which means that one of us or both of us have got sound working fine now. Good.
It's all good now. Perfect.
All good. Thank God. So, going back to my first question, I found 7 sectors which you're committed and involved with. And even though I've known you for a long time, I was incredibly impressed by the sheer range and diversification. Visual art, opera, education, philanthropy, sport, government, business. Have I left anything out?
I think that's a pretty good summary.
So which out of this incredible list is closest to your heart? And I'm just going to ask the director of the National Portrait Gallery, who, of course, whose board you chair, to look away now so he doesn't get hurt and upset by your answer.
I think the one that the community that I'm involved with, that I spend a lot of time concerned for at the moment, are the children in our schools who are unable to go to school at the moment. Yeah. I think it is, particularly within the communities in which we work, the assumption that children can learn from home in the same way as my son, for example, is learning from home is difficult to make, and I worry a lot about some of the children in the communities in which we work and their opportunity to continue learning during this period.
Well, I think it's incredibly challenging because, I mean, my daughter is too young. I mean, she's at nursery school, so I don't, thank God, have to deal with that. But if I had to be a working mother doing homeschooling, a single working mother doing homeschooling, keeping the home fires burning, I mean, wow. Really tough.
Yes, and I think, with the greatest respect, you have access to much better support and much better technology
Yes,
than
of course.
most of our children have. And the assumption that our kids can access learning portals from home with the technology that they have, and in many cases with the lack of Wi-Fi, means that young people who actually really thrive and need the contact with their fellow pupils are not only denied the opportunity to be in touch with their friends, but they're also denied the opportunity to continue in the same way their learning journey. And I think that the gap between the most able and the most privileged, with some of the children that are coming from some of these less privileged backgrounds, continues therefore to be extended. And that for me causes a lot of worry in terms of what they can catch up, what their capacity and ability to catch up with their learning journey next year.
So just for the avoidance of doubt, I do recognise I'm incredibly privileged. However,
Julia, I think that isn't a comment directed at
no,
that is us collectively.
like that. But of course, I mean, you know, but it is really worth saying. What I also wanted to ask is then therefore the Trust going to be doing special work with the schools you support, or maybe supporting more schools, given this or issue that you've identified?
Well, we are doing everything we can, to ensure that home learning is facilitated and supported by our teachers. And we will do that, and we'll continue to do that for the duration of the lockdown. But it just, I think, just my concern, I guess, is it serves to sort of accentuate the divide and the gap between some of the more fortunate children in our country and the least. And that is, whatever my Trust is able to do, catching up on that is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
There's no panacea for the lack of social interaction and the lack of social stimulation that the children will be experiencing during this period.
I mean, you were brought up in Grimsby, a large coastal seaport in Lincolnshire, which has suffered post-industrial decline. Much of your philanthropy is focused around there, and includes, for example, the transformation of the Lincoln Cathedral, which of course is, speaking to our spiritual well-being. What is it that touches your heart, and why do you think you can make a difference? And one other question I want to ask: were you aware of the disparity in the townspeople of Grimsby when you were growing up? The disparity in access as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my starting point would be that charity begins at home. And clearly, from my standpoint, Grimsby and North Lincolnshire were very close to my heart, and a community that my family have been involved with for many generations. I think also that projects in big philanthropic endeavours in London have got the benefit of a huge international pool of potential donors. Whereas in Lincolnshire, that isn't the case. And therefore, I just feel that having that sort of unique attachment to that particular part of the countryside, and having seen during my life the needs of those communities, it puts me in a unique position, really, to try and make a difference in a part of the world that really matters to me.
But alongside this other incredible work that you're doing in education, you've also assembled an amazing collection of British art. And I'm going to name some, but by no means all of the artists. So David Hockney, Bridget Riley, Anthony Gormley, Gilbert George, Peter Blake, Barbara Hepworth, Frank Auerbach, Peter Doig, Tony Cragg are amongst the very impressive list of names. And also you collect artists who are less well known, which are regularly on loan to museums all over the world. Nick Sirota said about your collection: when David commits to an idea, whether it's helping Nottingham University with a 2.1 million personal gift to support education for less advantaged children, building one of the most important private collections of post-1960s British art in less than 12 years, or finding his acclaimed Neville Holt Opera Festival, or even hosting his spectacular Halloween parties, you carry through with determination and a knowledge and instinctive aesthetic eye, as well as high levels of focus and energy, to ensure that the end result is the very best. So tell us about the Halloween parties. No, you don't have to tell us about the Halloween parties.
Well, the only thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is I think that due to social distancing, there won't be a Halloween party this year. So don't be offended if you don't receive an invitation, Julia.
So, do you have one work of art in your collection that you always go to for inspiration? And what is it? And what is it in a work of art that makes you want to own it?
Well, those are very complex questions. I mean, I think that I had a unique opportunity particularly when I acquired my house in Leicestershire, to really commit to putting together a collection of pictures that were relevant and made a difference. And I had the great good fortune to be invited to Chatsworth to have lunch with the former Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. And the former Duchess was quite challenging in a way. She asked me about what she thought my personal commitment should be to supporting artists, which is obviously something that she'd done in a very meaningful way. Not only supporting artists, but supporting British artists and building a collection that was relevant to my lifetime. And it was a very inspiring lunch, because in the process of not only listening to what she enjoyed about being a collector, but also her challenge to me in the way that I was thinking about it, it gave me some real clarity that in order to do something meaningful and special, you had to have a real sense of purpose and a real sense of dedication. And what it also revealed to me was that a lot of the pleasure of collecting art comes through knowing and supporting artists and developing that relationship with artists over a period of years, in order that it's not just about the picture on the wall, but it's also about their interpretation of the picture and what they were feeling and what they were thinking about at the time that they were painting it, creating it. And so in my thinking around that, I thought that focusing around British artists and British artists that were alive during my lifetime, that really gave me a clear universe of people to support, but also clarity about the sort of networks that I would like to access in order to build a collection.
And do you have advisors? I mean, my sense is that this is very much your vision, your choice. You know,
well, I have I have the great good fortune to have friends like you, and friends like Nicholas Cullinan, and friends like Ivor Bracker, and Ivor's my neighbour, and numerous other friends who are and so it's not about advising, it's about being part of a dialogue, I think, that recognises people that have made a contribution, people that are doing things special in a special way, people that are thinking about art and the role of art in the community that makes a difference.
You also have, you had for a number of years, Johnny Yeo as an artist in residence.
I did have, yes.
Which is incredible, an incredible thing to do. Not least to see an artist as he or she makes work is really an incredible privilege, you know, because all roads don't lead to Rome, it's a winding path, and a really fascinating process to be able to witness. And is that something you've continued, or do you think it's something you will continue, or do you have opera residencies now?
Well, as far as my relationship with Johnny Yeo is concerned, I mean, what was particularly fascinating about that over quite a number of years was he actually lived in my house and painted in my house. And what that brought home to me is the difference, but also the similarities between my life and his life. And it also, it was a really, it was a very valuable experience to be able to go home from my office-based job and talk to somebody whose challenges on a daily basis were so different and yet so interesting. But at the end of the day, we were both able to support each other. It wasn't only Johnny that worked in the studio in the house. Clara Drummond was working there for a while as well, and also Jason Brooks. So there were a selection of artists that came through the house, but Johnny was the one who was there for the longest period of time. And I do continue to support and work with Johnny through the studios that he works in now, which I bought from Eduardo Palazzo's estate when Eduardo died. So it's nice to have that ongoing relationship, but it's a different relationship now because it's not a daily relationship, it's more an occasional relationship.
And business often talks about taking risks, and I always think, you know, if most business people knew the risks that, for example, arts organisations, publicly funded arts organisations took, or indeed artists, you know, it would make their heads stand on end. Can you see there being a kind of feedback to business from, particularly now, from the art world, from the not-for-profit sector, or indeed from the commercial sector?
Well, I think the particular relationship that I see that we can all learn from each other in this regard is going to be the speed of change, the pace of change, coming out of this pandemic, coming out of lockdown. Truly successful organisations going forward are going to recognise the fact that really not quite everything, but really significant parts of their organisation, parts of their business, whatever it is, will need to change and adapt very quickly. There's clearly a trend that has accelerated the pace of digitalisation, and that I think is something, but also how we do things and where we do things, and working from home versus these are a series of sort of really meaningful changes to our lives that successful organisations, whether it be artistic, cultural, business, successful organisations will embrace, and those that don't embrace, I think, might end up being left behind. So I think we have to look at the current situation we find ourselves in and say, right, what can we learn and how do we embrace those for the future success of our organisation?
And have you got any pointers that you could tell us now that are over and above what you've already said, that, you know, you can all write down and rush off and do?
Well, I think one of the key trends is how do we make ourselves relevant digitally as well as physically, and I think that's something that is particularly relevant to the National Portrait Gallery. And I think that what we've done over the last couple of weeks with launching the BP Portrait Prize online, and then the Hold Still series of photography that we're doing with the Duchess of Cambridge, these are a recognition and a realisation that during this period, national institutions need to continue to be as relevant as they can, but that will be inevitably more online than through their own physical space.
Well, I mean, that's an incredible project. And it was launched yesterday. There was a long interview with the Duchess of Cambridge on this morning, I think, the radio program, the television program. But just for those people who haven't seen it, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because everybody can do it.
Yes, I mean, it is a fantastic initiative. It's a community-based photographic prize sponsored by Taylor Wessing, for which we're very grateful. Around 3 themes. It's around our life during lockdown. 3 themes: helpers and heroes, the new normal, and acts of kindness. And people are invited to submit their photos. I think the date is by the middle of June. I think off the top of my head it's 16th of June. And then the prizes are being assessed not only on the photo, but also on the emotional impact of the image that has been presented. So I think it's a really, I mean, we are of course incredibly fortunate as a national institution to have the support of the Duchess of Cambridge in putting this together. But I think that it's a really relevant and also nice way of trying to remember some of the amazing things that will happen during this period of lockdown, and celebrating those achievements during lockdown.
Yes. I want to move on to opera, and of course the amazing recently expanded Opera House in your grounds.
Well, recently built, really, Julia, rather than expanded, because...
Tell me that again.
Recently built rather than expanded, because what we have now is not an expansion of something that we had previously. It's a recently built opera house.
It's not a concrete edifice towering in your gardens. looming over the Leicestershire countryside. But
No.
It's a
many visitors who come to my house don't even know that there is an opera house in the grounds.
Wow.
It's immaculately hidden.
Perfectly formed in the manner, of course, of the great English traditions started, I think, by Glyndebourne. But it speaks very much to your passion for music. Did you sing?
I did sing at school, yes. I did. Not very successfully, Julia, and it's not something that I'm not going to be able to download any evidence of that, luckily for you.
Is there a hidden story here about you being in a band? You know,
me being a frustrated musician? No, there's no hidden story about me being a frustrated musician. I think I was incredibly lucky that my father appreciated music, all sorts of music, he had a diverse interest in music. He himself sang. So the concept of being interested in music and involved in music was one that was in me from a very early age. The fact that I was not very good at it is something that I put to one side because the greater appreciation of it was more important to me.
I read somewhere there's a fantastic story that when you were at school, there were 3 options you could do on a Saturday night. Your homework, obviously compelling, to go to a theatre production or to go to a musical production. So you obviously had, so wisely, you did not choose the homework option. But you
no, that was very true, actually. At my prep school, between the age of 8 and 13, Saturday evenings, you could either do your homework or you would be taken to Sheffield to go and see something at the Crucible or to go and hear the Halle Orchestra. Amazing. And my default was anything to get out of the homework. So I reinvented myself very quickly as an eager culture beaver at this stage. But of course, my earliest opera experiences, the Magic Flute, for example, and my earliest theatre experiences, and indeed, were often through this Saturday evening trip to Sheffield. And I think that if you have that good fortune from an early stage to start to listen, to start to understand, to embrace, and I would not at any stage pretend that I understood 100% of what was going on. This is not, but it's just that opportunity to experience it. If you have that at an early stage, then that's, I think, stays with you for life. And that's very much what we try to do with the kids in my schools, is to give them the opportunity of those musical, theatrical, or sporting opportunities. Because if you discover these things from early on in life, it's a gift that stays with you.
Yes. I mean, I remember being in the school choir and singing John Tavener. I mean, I remember it as if it was yesterday. It was thrilling beyond measure, exciting, stimulating, life-enhancing. You were part of a group. And you talk a lot about how these kind of initiatives also help people to connect and also learn about teamwork, which is incredibly important. So the young future stars that you have in the productions in your music festival, you particularly choose young singers, I think, at the beginning of their careers, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the Neville Hall Opera was never going to compete for the best singers in the world versus Glyndebourne and other. And it's not only about resource, but it's also the size of our theatre. And therefore, we had to establish what our niche would be, and we decided that our theme would be about the next best thing. And our job at every stage is to try and find the next best singers, theatre design, set designers, producers. And we have also the great opportunity to incorporate a number of the young people from our schools into the project. So whenever there's a children's chorus, the children will always come from local Tret schools. And that gives a great sense of purpose to those children in terms of the work that they're doing at school, because if they are successful and deemed to be taking it seriously, they get the opportunity to appear on stage next to professional musicians, and that's a great opportunity for them as well.
And I just had a question come through from one of the people who are watching this.
Oh dear.
No, it's all good. Which young artists are you interested in now? Is there anybody you're particularly following, or you see as being worth watching?
Well, I wouldn't what I say is that anybody who's come to sing at Neville Hall as part of our Young Artist Programme, we like to stay in touch with them. So, but on a personal level, I think I find it very difficult to name names in this situation because, from my perspective, it's incredibly important that all of them, they're part of a team.
Yes.
If I were to name one person out of it, it's Sinead O'Kelly, who came to us when she was at the Royal College and has now got a scholarship and is living in Zurich and performing as part of the opera theatre there. And she's continued to stay in touch with us as a family. She gives occasional lessons and masterclasses, fortunately, to my son. And having given young people their first opportunity and then seen them take advantage of that opportunity, continue to develop, continue to move forward, that's a great sense of pride to us as an opera company.
Of course. Incredible. I mean, absolutely wonderful. Well, it's interesting because when I was reading about you, and I feel quite knowledgeable now, I feel I can really go on.
Hopefully not too knowledgeable, Julia.
Subject David Ross. The Telegraph called the reopening of Neville Holt an indisputable triumph, which of course is what every opera house, or indeed any performing arts or visual arts organisation in the world wants to have it described. But it also described you in the same article as the Buccaneering owner. Now, do you think that's fair?
The Buccaneering owner?
Owner. The Buccaneering owner, which is wonderful because it's a tremendously polite euphemism for many, many things. Now, I've known you for a very long time and seen your incredible success. And by the way, you started Carphone Warehouse in the same year that I went to be director of the Serpentine. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's because the Carphone Warehouse went like that almost immediately.
Well, so did the Serpentine.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. But you know, those were very fascinating days. You know, they were economically very different, and you know, it was very fascinating being part of that time. But you know, do you agree that one needs to be a sort of buccaneer in a way, in whether you're in the arts or in business, that you really need to really kind of be out there, you know, for the cut and thrust, on the coalface, every day?
Well, I think it's all driven by our personality, isn't it? And the sort of person that we are. And we're either people that want to make a difference, to challenge, to antagonise and make things happen. And that's my particular mentality and approach to life. I want to be part of special things. And what we've done with Neville Hall Opera and what we're in the process, hopefully, of being successful with at the National Portrait Gallery and what we've been successful with at the British Olympic Association is being part of special things that have a great relevance to a large number of people and touch the hearts of a large number of people. And my own personal motivation is, you know, we're here for a short period of time. We're only here once. So whilst we're here, let's make a difference. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic, and it's really wonderful that you do and you are. So, what role do you see the arts playing in the restoration of the country?
That's a very good question. I would really hope that the artistic community and the creative industries community generally is able to step up with some really interesting ideas as to how we can show leadership coming out of the current challenge that we find ourselves in. I think that we've got. As the National Portrait Gallery is, you know, with our Hold Still project, that's part of bringing community together. And I think that's a really important objective. I think there's another objective, which is about making art available to all. And I think that is a national program, and it is partly digital, and it is also partly about public art. And so if I was in Nicholas Cullen's, Nick Sirota's role at the moment, I would be thinking, how can I use this to give young and up-and-coming artists the opportunity to create some really interesting things as public or digital art? Because some of our traditional museums and galleries may not have the capacity individually to do this, But with support, I think we could be using the arts and the creative industry generally as a way to continue to bring the country together, but also to take forward the creative offer that is available to young children in Grimsby, young children in Corby, and young children in the communities in which we work. Because for some of them, it is a long way for them to go to open their minds to something that is genuinely culturally enhancing. And I would be trying to think about it in those terms. And
may I ask, firstly, I should just add that Nick Sirota, formerly director of Tate, is now chairman of the Arts Council, and of course, this must be a question which is very much on his mind. And also it relates very much to the New Deal, which was a series of programme public works projects, financial reforms and regulations, were conceived by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the US from 1933 to 1939 after the Great Depression. And, you know, arguably this is the worst depression that we're in now or will go into since the 30s. Do you think that's true, or are you more hopeful?
Well, I am by nature an optimist. I think we find ourselves in a difficult position.
Yeah.
But I think with the right leadership and a plan, we should be able to manoeuvre our way through this particular challenge and to move forward. If I were to give one idea of what I would be doing if I was in a leadership role, I would be unashamedly celebrating the concept of manufacturing and buying British over the next couple of years. I think that there will be really important projects that have to be delivered, and those projects should unashamedly be to regenerate and kickstart our economy once again. And I think that if the government can harness the same level of public support as it has for the current messaging around staying at home to supporting at home, I think then we have a chance of coming out of this faster than we might worry about.
Well, that would be brilliant. And of course, you come from an area of the country where industry was such an important part of its wealth. And indeed, you know, those amazing, you know, Manchester, Liverpool and so on. Grimsby is a great fishing port. Where in previous times they've been extraordinarily, they've been very rich centres, they've been productive to the national, very important to the national economy. But how, I mean, obviously my thinking is a very old-fashioned one, because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how can we get the mills going? How can we get everybody back in the way that they once were? But that was then, this is now. So what do you see as the great industries? What do you see as the great possibilities?
I think there will be opportunities actually for manufacturing.
Great.
And I'm not going to predict here and now what those will be, but I think some of the dependence that we've had on a global supply chain could justifiably be reconsidered to a more local supply chain. I think that is something that business will have to think about. Business should think about. But clearly, the next generation is going to be around technology, digital technology, medical technology. There are huge opportunities, and this is all then comes back to research and development, great universities, great knowledge, and very well educated young people. Yeah. So I think, alongside investing in community-based arts projects, I would be thinking, how do we make ourselves fit for the next 10, 20 years as we come out of this challenge? And I think investing in education is one of the keys to that. We have great universities, we have some fantastic schools, but we don't have enough fantastic schools.
No. And so thinking about artists and the artists you support and the artists, both the artists you support by being chair of the National Portrait Gallery, but also the artists within your collection and the artists you know, where do you buy from auction principally, or is it through a variety of different sources which you kind of, people tell you about things and you think, wow, that's an amazing, mostly picture, but often sculpture too. How does that work?
Well, the familiarisation process often starts because you visited a show or a gallery. And then by visiting the show or the gallery, you familiarise yourself over a period of time with a particular artist or a particular style, let's say British pop art or whatever. So it's not just a matter of sort of what comes up at an auction or at a dealer. I think the sort of process starts earlier on as you begin to familiarise yourself with particular themes within British art, particular artists within British art, and then clearly, as you can take that one step further and get to know the individual artist, then that is a further progression in the process. But of course, the sort of the ideal situation in all of this is if you have a direct relationship with an artist, as you're able to identify particular works that they might be creating and to encourage the artist through your ongoing support, through your dedication and devotion to their work, that they should be identifying particular pieces of work that they might be creating that they might like to go into my collection. I think the happiest part of the artist-collector relationship is when you're able to access pictures directly from the artist prior to any auction or dealer. Sorry about that.
Oh dear. Now,
I had to get that in there, Julia, come on.
well, I mean, you know, ladies and gentlemen, for the avoidance of doubt, the proper way to do it, of course, is that you go through the dealer to buy the work of art, and everybody's happy, the dealer, the artist, and the collector. So I'm going to
I actually
gloss over that.
That was a very slightly unfair comment. Even with some of my most important personal relationships with artists, I would identify the picture in their studio, but then buy it through the dealer, because I fully acknowledge the importance of the dealer within the universe of the art world. So I'll take that one back. I apologise.
Okay. That's good to know. But I mean, it's interesting because the difference between when I started, and indeed you started at Carphone Warehouse, and now is that, you know, the commercial world, the not-for-profit world, the artists, the collectors, the philanthropists, you know, the sponsors, it's a sort of virtuous circle, which is incredibly productive, because it means that the art world, instead of being a marginalized little entity, which is sort of separated away from everything, is now part of everyday life. And people can't just go, oh, you know, we don't understand that, we don't need to know about that. And so collectors were really what the missing piece of the puzzle, from my perspective, that made that in the UK art world, or in the art world in this country. Now that marvelously, that the collectors have come forward, there are marvelous collectors in this country. Of course, yours is really notable and important. And long may it continue, because it is people like you and all the others who are sort of philanthropists is really essential to the world, the art world as we know it now, and increasingly as we go forward. So David, I'm really so grateful to you for joining me this morning. Thank you so very, very much. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and many, many congratulations on all your many, many endeavours. And I wish everything, all your many organisations, the greatest success in the future. And I look forward to seeing what they will all be doing. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you, Julia. It's been a great pleasure. As you can imagine, we're not all that busy on a Saturday morning during lockdown, so it's been very nice to have something to look forward to.
Good. Well, it's very, very lovely to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in person. And I hope that you will be joining us next week, because we've now had 3 Teas with Julia on Saturday, which you can rewatch on Gallery Today's Pack YouTube channel. It's also shared in our weekly From the Studio newsletter, which you can subscribe, as I hope you are a subscriber, David, via the link in bio on our Instagram account. The newsletter includes other exclusive contributions from our artists, such as studio visits during the quarantine, and also a section called The Artist's Eye. Next Saturday, I'll be having tea with Erwin Worm, who is an Austrian artist whose work plays with the boundaries between form and formlessness, gravity and the absurd. He is perhaps best known for his one-minute sculptures, sculptural performances in which participants follow a set of instruction from the artist to arrange themselves in challenging poses with everyday objects. Available on YouTube if you don't know what I'm talking about. Most recently, his projects have included sculptures of bloated cars, large-scale Polaroids, drawings that, to quote Irwin, walk around in his head, and ceramic sculptures which reveal elements of the human body. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing you all then. And David, again, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Julia. See you soon, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so. Bye.
Excellent.